Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to get past the noise, wade through all the sources, and really understand what's going on.
Today we are diving deep, really deep, into something that affects literally everything we do. Human behavior. Specifically, habits.
Yeah, the invisible architecture, you could say. We're looking at how habits work neurologically and, crucially, how you can actually gain some control over them.
It's about getting access to the control panel for your own life, in a way. We've got a ton of research here focusing on just that.
And the starting point, well, it's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it? It really makes you question how much we're actually choosing day to day.
It does. William James, the philosopher, wrote way back in 1892 that our lives are basically just a mass of habits.
And he wasn't wrong. Modern research, like those Duke University studies, they found what, like 40% or more of our daily actions?
Yeah, over 40%. Think about that. What you eat, how you react to emails, whether you exercise, it's often not a conscious decision.
It's just autopilot.
Total autopilot. Your brain defaulting to these pre-programmed loops to save energy, like driving to work, right? You barely think about the actual driving sometimes.
Guilty as charged. My mind is usually somewhere else entirely.
Exactly. So our goal here today, our mission for you, is to give you the tools, the framework to actually see those automatic behaviors and start making changes.
Whether it's health, productivity, money, relationships, the sources suggest it all comes back to understanding and tweaking these habit loops.
Absolutely. And maybe the best way to grasp the power here is through a story. Let's talk about Lisa.
Right, Lisa. Her life was really hitting rock bottom. Divorce, depression, she was overweight, smoking heavily, just feeling completely stuck.
And she has this moment, this kind of wake-up call on a business trip in Cairo, middle of the night, jet-lagged, desperate for a cigarette.
And in the dark, she grabs what she thinks is her lighter.
Tries to light it and smells burning plastic. She was trying to light a pen.
Wow. That must have been a shock.
A huge shock. It just hit her how little control she felt she had. That feeling was so strong, she decided right then she needed to find one thing, just one habit she could change.
So she sets this, honestly, pretty wild goal for herself.
Totally wild.
Yeah.
She decides she's going to train for a trek across the desert within a year. Keep in mind, she's out of shape, a heavy smoker.
Seems almost impossible. But the key was, to even attempt that, she had to quit smoking.
That was the linchpin. So she focuses all her energy on that one single habit, quitting smoking.
And this is where it gets really interesting looking at the research on her. That one change didn't just stay isolated, did it?
Not at all. It triggered this incredible ripple effect. Over the next 6 months, replacing smoking with jogging, that was her new routine, it fundamentally changed almost everything else.
How so?
Well, she started eating differently because she needed energy for her runs. Her sleep patterns improved because of the exercise. Her work schedule changed because she had to make time for training, which actually made her more productive.
And she wasn't even consciously trying to fix her diet or sleep.
No. It just happened. As a consequence of focusing on that one keystone change, she even started saving money because, well, cigarettes are expensive.
And the outcome was huge. She went back to school, bought a house, got engaged.
But the really cool part is the brain scans. Researchers looked at her brain activity, and you know what they saw? The old patterns, the neurological pathways for her smoking habit, they were still there, still visible.
So they didn't disappear?
No, but they were being overridden. Crowded out by the new, stronger pathways linked to jogging and achieving her goal, she basically built a better, stronger habit on top of the old one.
So she didn't erase the old habit, she just steered the car onto a different road when the urge hit.
That's a great way to put it. That one habit change acted like a switch, redirecting her whole life, neurologically and practically.
Okay, so let's unpack the how. How does this redirection actually work inside our heads? This is part one. The neurology, the mechanics of this habit loop.
Right. This is the basic blueprint for pretty much every habit, simple or complex. It's always got 3 parts.
First up is the cue. This is the trigger, right? The thing that tells your brain, okay, run the automatic program now.
Exactly. It could be anything, a time of day, like lunchtime, a place like your desk, an emotional state, feeling stressed, even other people.
Then comes the routine. That's the actual behavior itself.
Yep, the physical action like grabbing a cookie, or a mental one like starting to worry, or even an emotional response like feeling relief. It's the thing you do.
And finally, the crucial part, the reward.
The payoff.
The payoff. This is what tells your brain, hey, that sequence, cue routine, it worked out pretty well. Let's remember that for next time. It could be a physical pleasure, an emotional boost, a sense of satisfaction.
So cue, routine, reward, that's the loop. Where in the brain is this loop actually, physically located?
It's primarily housed in a really deep, ancient part of the brain called the basal ganglia.
Okay, basal ganglia. What's its main job? Why do we even have this habit-storing thing? Efficiency. Pure and simple. The brain is always looking for ways to save effort. Think about learning to drive. At first, it takes intense concentration, right? You're thinking about every little thing.
Oh, yeah. Clutch, gas, mirror, signal. Exhausting.
Exactly. But after a while, the basal ganglia takes over those routine actions. It chunks them together into an automatic sequence. So your conscious brain, the prefrontal cortex, can relax or focus on other things.
Like noticing the traffic ahead, or thinking about what's for dinner.
Or wondering if Jimmy remembered his lunchbox, like in your driving example earlier. The basal ganglia handles the driving routine so you can think about novel problems.
Okay, that makes sense. And the rat maze experiments really show this, don't they?
They demonstrate it perfectly. When a rat is first put in a maze, its brain is firing on all cylinders. Lots of activity everywhere as it explores, sniffs around, trying to figure out how to get the chocolate reward.
It's actively learning, problem solving.
Right. But once it learns the route, once that habit forms, the brain activity changes dramatically. Most of the brain quiets down while the rat just scurries through the now familiar path.
And the only real spikes in activity are
right at the beginning when it hears the click the cue that the maze is open, and right at the end when it gets the chocolate, the reward.
So the bit in the middle, the routine, becomes almost completely automatic, handled by the basal ganglia.
Precisely. It shows the brain literally offloads the routine to this specialized structure. It stores the script.
To really hammer home how separate this habit system is from conscious thought, we have to talk about Eugene Pauly.
EP.
Ah, yes. EP's story is both tragic and incredibly revealing. He had viral encephalitis, a severe infection that essentially destroyed the parts of his brain responsible for forming new memories, the hippocampus mainly.
So he had profound amnesia. He couldn't remember anything new for more than maybe a minute. Pretty much. You could introduce yourself, talk for 5 minutes, leave the room, come back, and he'd have no memory of ever meeting you. He didn't know his own grandchildren sometimes, couldn't even remember he had amnesia.
Just constantly living in this tiny window of the present moment.
Exactly. But here's the astonishing thing. Despite being unable to form new explicit memories, researchers found EP could still form new habits.
How do they test that?
They used tasks like getting him to choose between different colored objects on a table, where one consistently had a reward sticker hidden underneath. Logically, he should never learn which one is correct because he wouldn't remember the previous trials.
Right. Each trial would be like the first time for him.
That's what you'd think. But his performance actually improved over time. He started reliably picking the correct object, even though he had absolutely no conscious memory of doing the task before.
He couldn't explain why he was picking it.
Not at all. He'd just say something like, well, it's just here somehow, pointing to his head, and my hand just goes for it. His body learned the routine even when his conscious mind couldn't.
That is wild. So the habit formation happened completely outside his awareness.
Completely. It proved definitively that the habit loop cue, routine reward, is processed and stored in the basal ganglia, totally separate from the hippocampus and conscious memory systems.
So he could learn routines like finding the bathroom in his house or even going for his regular walk?
Yes, as long as the cues were consistent. His daughter noticed he could find the kitchen or go for his walk around the block purely based on the sequence of cues triggering the automatic routine in his basal ganglia.
But what happened if something changed? Like if furniture was moved?
That's the key limitation. If a cue was changed or missing, say, road construction blocked his usual walking path, the script would break. He'd be instantly lost and confused because the basal ganglia can only execute the stored routine. It can't adapt or problem solve when things deviate.
Okay, so we understand the loop happens in the basal ganglia, separate from memory. But what actually makes the loop? What gives it its power? It's not just the reward itself, is it?
No, it's more than that. The real engine driving the habit loop is craving. It's that sense of anticipation, that expectation of the reward that kicks in once the cue is registered.
The craving, that feeling of needing or wanting the outcome of the routine.
Exactly. And this is something marketers figured out, maybe intuitively at first, long before the neuroscience was clear. Think about Claude Hopkins and Pepsodent toothpaste.
Right, the guy who basically got America brushing its teeth in the early 1900s. How did he do it?
He nailed the habit loop formula. He needed a simple, universal cue. He found it in tooth film, that slightly gritty feeling we all get on our teeth.
Okay, obvious cue. What was the reward?
He explicitly promised beautiful teeth, a wider smile. That was the advertised reward. But the real genius was in creating the craving.
How did toothpaste create a craving?
Pepsodent contained ingredients like citric acid and mint oil. These created a cool, tingly sensation in the mouth. It felt active.
The tingle.
The tingle. That sensation became the internal signal, the proof for the user that the product was working. People started to crave that feeling, that minty freshness, as the reward for brushing.
So the craving wasn't really for cavity prevention. It was for the sensation that proved the product worked.
Precisely. And it worked incredibly well, even though, as the sources point out, Pepsodent wasn't actually that great at fighting cavities initially. Its success was built on manufacturing a craving linked to an obvious cue.
Now, contrast that with Febreze. Procter & Gamble had this amazing product that chemically eliminated odors, but it bombed at first, right?
Yeah, a total flop initially. They marketed it logically. Cue, bad smells, routine cheat of spray Febreze, reward, no smell.
Seems reasonable. Why didn't it work?
Because people often become nose blind or olfactory adapted to the persistent bad smells in their own homes. Pet owners don't notice the cat smell. Smokers don't notice the smoke smell. The cue wasn't noticeable to the target audience.
So the loop never even got started for the people who needed it most. How did they fix it?
They had to completely reframe the habit loop. They watched how people actually cleaned their homes, and they noticed something interesting. People often used air fresheners after cleaning as a finishing touch.
Like a little celebration.
Kind of, yeah. So P&G relaunched Febreze. The new CUE wasn't a bad smell. It was finishing the cleaning routine. Tidying up the room became the trigger.
Okay, and the routine?
Spraying Febreze. And the reward was no longer just the absence of bad odor, but the addition of a light, pleasant scent. That clean smell became the signal, the mini celebration, that the job was truly done.
So the craving shifted from getting rid of bad to getting the pleasant finishing touch.
Exactly, and that worked. It tapped into an existing routine and provided a desirable sensory reward. It highlights a fundamental principle for behavior change.
Which brings us to the golden rule of habit change.
The golden rule. The sources are really clear on this. You can't just extinguish an old habit. Those neural pathways are pretty much permanent. You have to replace the routine.
So the rule is, keep the old cue, keep the same barrier, reward the old habit delivered, but insert a new routine.
That's the core formula. Let's look at Tony Dungy turning around the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He inherited a team famous for losing, for being chaotic.
Yeah, they were thinking too much, hesitating on the field.
Right. Dungy realized the players needed to react automatically, not think. The CUE, what the opposing team did, and the reward, making a successful play, winning, had to stay the same. But he drastically simplified the routines.
He drilled them on a smaller set of plays, basic reactions, over and over.
Over and over and over until they were completely automatic. When the cue happened, they didn't have to decide, they just did the ingrained routine. That speed and lack of hesitation made them incredibly effective.
Keep the cue, deliver the reward, change the routine. We see this in addiction recovery too, right? Like with Alcoholics Anonymous.
Absolutely. AA is a classic example of applying the golden rule. They recognize that people drink often in response to specific cues, stress, anxiety, social situations, seeking a specific reward relief, numbness, escape.
AA doesn't try to eliminate the need for relief, does it?
No, it accepts the cue and the desired reward, relief from stress, but it provides a completely different routine to get there. Instead of drinking, the routine becomes going to a meeting, calling your sponsor, working the steps, talking about your feelings.
So you get the fellowship, the emotional release, the coping mechanism, a similar reward, but through a constructive, non-destructive routine.
Exactly. But the research adds one more critical layer here. Just swapping the routine often isn't enough, especially when things get really tough. There's a missing ingredient.
And that is?
Belief. The belief that change is actually possible. AA, for instance, fosters this belief, whether it's through a higher power, the support of the group, or just seeing that others have succeeded.
Why is belief so crucial?
Because when major stress hits, the old, deeply ingrained habit pathway screams the loudest. It's the path of least resistance. Without a strong belief that the new routine can actually work, that you can get through this without resorting to the old habit, people often relapse.
So belief acts like an anchor, holding you steady while the new routine takes root and becomes more automatic than the old one.
Precisely. It's the crucial element that helps you navigate those critical moments until the new habit loop solidifies.
Okay, so we've got the individual loop, the golden rule, the role of craving and belief. Now let's zoom out. Let's talk about keystone habits.
Ah, yes, keystone habits. These are fascinating. They're basically small changes or routines that seem minor, but they end up triggering these wide-ranging positive shifts across many different areas of your life or an organization.
Like knocking over the lead domino, and a whole chain reaction follows.
Exactly. They unlock other positive changes automatically. The classic corporate example is Paul O'Neill at Alcoa, the aluminum company.
Right. He becomes CEO in 1987. Investors are expecting him to talk profits, cutting costs.
And instead, his very first speech focuses almost entirely on one thing: worker safety. He declares his goal is 0 injuries. 0.
Which must have sounded completely crazy to Wall Street at the time. How is focusing on safety going to boost the bottom line?
Well, O'Neill understood it was a keystone habit. To achieve 0 injuries wasn't just about putting up posters. It forced a fundamental change in how the entire company operated.
How so? What had to change?
Think about it. To prevent injuries, you need to understand why they happen. So if a worker got injured, O'Neill demanded a full analysis within 24 hours, explaining why it happened and outlining a plan to prevent recurrence. This required managers to actually talk to workers, understand the manufacturing process deeply.
Which probably uncovered inefficiencies or problems that weren't just safety issues.
Exactly. If molten metal splashed, it wasn't just a safety failure. It meant something was wrong with the pouring process, the equipment, the raw materials. Fixing the safety issue required fixing the underlying operational problem.
So improving safety forced improvements in quality, efficiency, communication.
Everything. Communication had to improve vertically and horizontally. Processes had to be standardized and optimized. It created habits of excellence that permeated the whole organization, driven by this one focus on safety.
And the results were incredible, weren't they?
Absolutely staggering. When O'Neill left Alcoa, its market value had increased 5-fold, and it was one of the safest companies in the world. That one keystone habit transformed the entire culture and performance.
We see this at the individual level too, right? Like with elite athletes. Michael Phelps is a great example.
Oh, absolutely. His coach, Bob Bowman, was a master of instilling keystone habits. It wasn't just about swimming laps, it was about creating an entire ecosystem of routines.
Diet, sleep, stretching, the specific warm-up routine.
And crucially, the mental routines. Phelps had this incredibly detailed pre-race ritual, stepping onto the block a certain way, swinging his arms exactly 3 times.
And the visualization, the videotape, he called it.
Yes. He would mentally rehearse the perfect race, every stroke, every turn, every breath, over and over. The goal was to make the actual race feel like an automatic execution of a deeply ingrained habit, minimizing conscious thought or potential panic under pressure.
Which famously saved him in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, the 200-meter butterfly final.
That's right. His goggles filled with water the moment he dived in. He was essentially swimming blind in the biggest race of his life.
Panic time for most people.
But not for Phelps, because Bowman had actually made him practice swimming in the dark sometimes, anticipating problems. More importantly, the race itself was so deeply habitualized through visualization and practice.
He knew exactly how many strokes it took to get to the wall, even without seeing it.
Exactly. He just executed the routine. The leaky goggles were an unexpected variable, but the underlying habit, the videotape, was so strong he stayed calm and won gold. He wasn't deciding. He was performing a habit.
And the sources emphasize these keystone habits don't have to be huge, dramatic things.
Not at all. They can be incredibly simple, like the research showing that people who make their bed every morning tend to report better productivity, better budgeting skills, and a greater sense of well-being.
Just making the bed, how does that work?
It seems to be a small win, a demonstration of order and discipline first thing in the morning that creates a positive feedback loop and makes other disciplined behaviors feel easier throughout the day.
Okay. What about food journaling?
Another great example. Researchers studied weight loss. One group was just asked to do one simple thing: write down everything they ate, just once a week. No other instructions.
They weren't told what to eat, just to track it.
Right. And that single act of tracking the keystone habit created a cascade. People naturally started noticing patterns. They started planning meals ahead to make tracking easier. They became more mindful of their snacking.
And they lost more weight.
Significantly more, twice as much, I think, as control groups who were given more complex diet plans but didn't do the journaling. The simple habit of tracking created the awareness and structure for other healthy habits to emerge spontaneously.
Now let's scale this up again. Habits don't just shape individuals. They define organizations and even societies. But in organizations, these routines aren't always designed for peak performance, are they? Sometimes they're more like truces.
That's a really important concept from the research. Organizational routines, the way things are always done, often emerge not from strategic planning, but as informal agreements or truces to minimize conflict between different groups or departments.
Like, sales doesn't interfere with engineering's process, even if it's inefficient, to avoid a fight.
Exactly. Or nurses avoid directly challenging certain doctors to keep the peace, even if they have safety concerns. These truces smooth over daily friction, but they can become incredibly dysfunctional and dangerous when they solidify into rigid, unchangeable habits.
The Rhode Island hospital case is just terrifying in this regard. The wrong side brain surgeries.
It's a horrifying example. There was clearly a dysfunctional truce there. Nurses felt unable to speak up effectively to certain surgeons due to hierarchy and past conflicts. They developed workarounds, trying to prevent errors quietly, but the underlying communication habit was broken.
They called it the glass factory, right? Implying everyone stayed in their own little box, afraid to cross lines.
Yeah, and when a critical moment arrived, like during that surgery on the elderly man, the ingrained habit of non-confrontation, the truce, was so strong that even when a nurse knew they were prepping the wrong side of the head, the system couldn't correct itself in time. The routine overrode common sense.
We saw a similar breakdown with the King's Cross station fire in London in 1987. A small fire became a deadly inferno.
Absolutely. That disaster was a direct result of rigid organizational habits and departmental truces. Each group stuck strictly to its own narrow responsibilities, preventing effective action.
Like the ticket clerk who saw the fire but felt it wasn't his job to intervene.
Right. His routine, his truce, was selling tickets. Firefighting belonged to another department. Then you had issues like the fire department technically not being allowed to use the underground's water systems without specific permission, which took time. Different departments were responsible for cleaning, maintenance, safety inspections.
And the lack of communication and rigid adherence to these separate routines meant nobody took overall responsibility until it was far too late.
Exactly. The organizational habits designed to maintain internal peace actually prevented a coordinated response to the crisis. 31 people died because of these ingrained dysfunctional routines.
It seems like it often takes a major crisis, a real shock to the system, to break these toxic organizational habits.
That's often the case, unfortunately. Disasters like the Challenger explosion, the Tenerife air crash, or widespread surgical errors finally created enough pressure to force organizations to re-examine and overhaul their core routines, implementing things like checklists, mandatory timeouts, and better communication protocols. The truce has to be forcibly broken.
Shifting from organizations to society, how do habits drive large-scale social change? The Montgomery bus boycott is the key example here.
Yes, the boycott's success wasn't just spontaneous outrage, it was built on layers of social habits. The sources identify 3 pillars.
Okay, pillar 1.
Strong ties. These are your close friends, family, trusted colleagues. Rosa Parks was deeply respected and well-connected within Montgomery's Black community, especially among activists like E.D. Nixon. Her arrest triggered the existing social habits of loyalty and mutual support among her immediate circle. They were the initial spark.
So friendship habits mobilized the first wave. What's pillar 2?
Weak ties and community pressure. These are the connections to acquaintances, neighbors, people in your church or social clubs. Once the boycott started, leaders leveraged these weak ties. Ministers preached participation from the pulpit, flyers blanketed the community, alternative transportation was organized.
Creating this sense that everyone was doing it, putting social pressure on people who might not even know Rosa Parks personally.
Exactly. It became the expected behavior, the community norm. Riding the bus became socially unacceptable within that community. The habit of conforming to peer pressure, amplified through these weak ties, sustained the boycott's broad participation.
And the third pillar? What keeps it going when things get really hard?
New identities and new habits. This is where leadership like Martin Luther King Jr.'s was crucial. He didn't just advocate for boycotting, he provided a powerful new framework, a new identity as morally righteous agents of change, and a new habit, disciplined nonviolent resistance.
So instead of reacting with anger or frustration, the new routine was planned, peaceful protest.
Precisely. This gave the movement structure, resilience, and a shared methodology for responding to the cue of oppression and harassment. It provided the self-perpetuating habits needed to endure the long, difficult struggle.
Underlying all of this, individual and collective, is the concept of willpower. We often talk about it like it's just a matter of character.
Right, but the research shows it's more complex than that. The famous Stanford marshmallow test was an early indicator.
Where kids who could resist eating one marshmallow now to get two later did better in life down the road.
Yeah, it showed self-control is important. But later research, like Roy Mervin's radish and cookie experiment, really drilled down into how willpower works.
Remind us of that one. It's kind of funny.
Sure, researchers put students in a room smelling of fresh-baked cookies. There was a bowl of cookies and a bowl of radishes. Some students were told, eat the cookies. Easy enough. Others were told, you can only eat the radishes.
Forcing them to exert serious willpower to resist those cookies.
Serious willpower. Then, after this, both groups were given a completely unrelated, deliberately frustrating puzzle to solve.
And the radish group gave up much faster.
Much faster, like 60% quicker, I believe. It demonstrated that the students who had used up their self-control resisting the cookies had less willpower left for the subsequent difficult task.
Proving the muscle analogy, willpower is a finite resource. It gets tired when you use it.
Exactly, it gets depleted. So smart organizations like Starbucks in this example figure out how to manage this. Starbucks wants consistent, friendly customer service, even under pressure.
Which requires a lot of willpower from baristas dealing with stressful situations.
It does. So Starbucks trains its employees not just on making coffee, but on specific willpower habits for handling inflection points. Those moments when a difficult customer or a rush of orders could drain their self-control and lead to a snap reaction.
And they use that ladder method routine.
Right. It's a pre-programmed habit loop. Listen to the customer, acknowledge their issue, take action to solve it, thank them, and explain what you did. By drilling this routine, it becomes automatic.
So the barista doesn't have to expend precious willpower deciding how to react in a stressful moment. They just run the laddie habit.
Precisely. It conserves their willpower muscle for other tasks and helps maintain consistent service. And interestingly, the research suggests that strengthening willpower in one area, like at work, can spill over and strengthen it in other areas of life too.
Okay, this brings us to the really tough final question. If habits are so automatic, driven by these deep neurological loops and finite willpower, what about free will and responsibility? Where do we draw the line?
This is where it gets ethically murky. The sources contrast two really difficult cases. First, Brian Thomas, the man who tragically killed his wife while experiencing a sleep terror.
He was dreaming he was fighting off an intruder and acted out that dream violently.
Yes. The neurological evidence strongly suggested his actions were completely involuntary, driven by a primal defensive habit loop triggered during sleep, with his conscious brain, his prefrontal cortex, essentially offline. He was found not guilty.
Because he couldn't consciously control or even be aware of the habit taking over.
Right. Now contrast that with Angie Bachman, the woman who developed a devastating gambling addiction. She lost her inheritance, caused immense pain to her family.
Driven by powerful cravings triggered by the casino environment, the sounds, the lights, the near misses.
Exactly. Neuroscience shows that for pathological gamblers, the brain reacts to near misses almost like actual wins, reinforcing the craving and the habit loop to keep betting, even against all rational thought. It's a powerful, almost automatic compulsion.
But the court found her responsible, didn't they?
They did. The legal argument essentially boiled down to this. While her urges were powerful and habit-driven, she was awake. She was at some level aware of the cues, aware of the potential consequences, and therefore had a moral and legal obligation to choose to seek help or employ strategies to override the habit. She failed to make that decision to change.
So the provocation here is the gambler, whose brain chemistry is hijacking her behavior while awake, truly more culpable than the sleepwalking murderer whose brain is offline?
It's a deeply uncomfortable question. The law draws a line based on consciousness and the perceived ability to choose to interrupt the loop, even if that choice is incredibly difficult. Knowing about the habit loop, according to this view, imparts a responsibility to try and change it.
So, wrapping this all up, this deep dive really underscores how much of our lives are run by these automatic habits. They're incredibly powerful.
They really are, running silently in the background, shaping our days, our health, our success. But the crucial takeaway isn't that we're puppets.
No, the key insight is that these habits, while automatic, are malleable. They can be changed.
If you understand the mechanics, if you can identify the cue, the routine, and the reward, you gain the ability to intervene.
And that starts with the conscious decision to want to change, to apply this framework. That initial choice seems to be the spark.
It really is. It reminds me of William James again. Facing his own struggles and doubts, he made this personal resolution.
To spend a whole year just acting as if he had free will. believing he could change his habits and his destiny, even if he couldn't prove it scientifically at the time.
And that act of sustained belief, that chosen stance, seemed to be transformative for him. It underlines the power of deciding to take control of the script.
You now have that framework. You understand the cue routine reward loop, the power of craving, the golden rule, keystone habits, willpower.
It reminds me of that David Foster Wallace story, the two young fish swimming along.
Oh, yeah, go on.
They meet an older fish who swims by and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" The two young fish swim on, and eventually one looks at the other and asks,
What the hell is water?
Exactly. Habits are the water we swim in every day. They're invisible until we consciously look for them.
But once you see the water, once you understand the currents, you're no longer just drifting. You have the knowledge, the flashlight, and the crowbar, as the Big puts it, to start actively navigating, to redirect your path. The power shifts back to you.